They thought the old paintball worker was just there to clean up after them. He was a former Marine Corps sniper with 47 confirmed kills. Hey everyone, welcome to Hidden Strength Stories. Today we're diving into a story that'll make you think twice about underestimating the quiet guy in the corner. Before we begin this tale of respect, precision, and the moment when cockiness meets true skill, let me know in the comments which part of the country you're watching from. And if stories about veterans who let their actions speak louder than their words inspire you, hit that subscribe button and join our community where we celebrate the quiet warriors among us. Earl Patterson had been working at Thunder Ridge Paintball Park outside Phoenix, Arizona for nearly 8 years. At 67, he moved with the careful precision of someone who had learned to make every movement count, though most customers assumed his deliberate pace came from age rather than training. Earl wore the same faded olive green work shirt every day, kept his gray haircut military short, and spoke only when necessary to explain rules or equipment. To the hundreds of weekend warriors who visited Thunder Ridge, Earl was just the old guy who handed out paintball guns, explained the basic rules, and cleaned up the mess when the games were over. He worked quietly in the background, while younger employees like Jake Morrison and Tyler Chen handled the more energetic aspects of customer service, pumping up groups for their games, explaining advanced tactics, and generally keeping the energy high. "Earl's a good guy," Jake would tell customers when they asked about the older employee. "Been here forever. Knows everything about the equipment, but he's not much for the action stuff. More of a behind-the-scenes kind of guy." What none of them knew was that Earl Patterson had spent 24 years as a Marine Corps sniper, including 3 tours in Vietnam where he'd earned a Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, and a reputation as one of the most effective long-range marksmen in the entire Corps. His official record showed 47 confirmed kills, though the actual number was higher. Earl had served in places whose names were still classified, taking shots that had changed the course of battles and saved countless American lives. Earl had come to Thunder Ridge not for the money, his military pension covered his modest needs, but for the peace he found in the desert landscape and the satisfaction of working with his hands. The paintball guns reminded him of the precision weapons he'd mastered decades ago, and maintaining them gave him a sense of purpose without the life and death stakes he'd carried for so long. The morning of Saturday, April 14th, brought a group that would test Earl's commitment to staying in the background. The Phoenix Elite Tactical Team, 5 college-aged men who had driven up from Arizona State University, arrived with custom gear, expensive paintball guns, and attitudes that announced they were serious players who didn't have time for amateurs. "We've got a reservation for 10 a.m., announced Brad Patterson, the group's self-appointed leader. At 22, Brad was built like a linebacker, carried himself with the swagger of someone who'd never met a challenge he couldn't handle, and wore military-style clothing that was clearly more fashion than function. "We're not here to play with weekend warriors," added his friend Connor Walsh, adjusting his tactical vest with exaggerated importance. "We play competitive paintball. We've been training for months. Hope you've got some challenging courses." Earl checked their reservation and began preparing their equipment with his usual methodical approach. He inspected each paintball gun, tested the CO2 cartridges, and laid out the protective gear with the same attention to detail he'd once applied to preparing for combat missions. "Jesus, this is taking forever," muttered the third member of the group, a skinny kid named Austin Phillips who clearly styled himself as the team's tactical expert. "Old man, can you move any slower? We've got other places to be today." Earl continued his inspection without comment, but Jake Morrison stepped in to smooth things over.
"Earl's just making sure everything's safe and working properly. Safety first, you know."
"Safety's fine," Brad said dismissively, "but we're not beginners. We don't need the full tutorial from Grandpa here." The fourth member of the group, Derek Stone, laughed loudly. "Yeah, no offense, old-timer, but I don't think you understand the level we play at. We're not here for the kiddie games." The fifth player, Marcus Rodriguez, was quieter than his friends, but nodded along with their comments. "We've been playing at advanced levels for 2 years. Tournament style, real tactical stuff." Earl finished his equipment check and handed each player their gear. "Rules are simple," he said in his gravelly voice. "No shooting within 10 feet. No shooting at faces. No climbing on obstacles. Game ends when time runs out or when one team eliminates the other." "That's it?" Connor asked mockingly. "No advanced tactics? No professional insights? Come on, old man. You must have some wisdom to share about paintball strategy." Earl looked at him evenly. "Play your own game. Stay hydrated. Watch your footing on the rocks. The group burst into laughter. "Watch our footing?" Austin repeated. "Dude, I don't think you understand. We're not tourists. We've been doing this for years." "Earl's not really a player," Jake explained, trying to keep the peace. "He's more of a maintenance guy. But he knows the courses really well if you have questions about the layouts." "Maintenance guy," Derek echoed with a smirk. "That explains a lot. No wonder he doesn't have any real tactical advice." Earl began cleaning a paintball gun that didn't need cleaning, his movements precise and controlled. In his mind, he was calculating ranges, wind factors, and sight adjustments, skills that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours. But he said nothing. The Phoenix Elite Tactical Team chose the Desert Storm course, Thunder Ridge's most challenging layout. It featured rocky terrain, multiple elevation changes, and enough cover to support complex tactical maneuvers. Earl walked them to the starting area, explained the boundaries, and set the timer for a 30-minute elimination match. "This should be interesting," Brad announced loudly as Earl walked away. 5 college athletes against whatever random players show up. I almost feel bad for whoever we're playing against." "Almost," Connor agreed. "Good thing the old guy's not playing. Wouldn't want to embarrass him too badly." Earl returned to the equipment area and began preparing gear for the next group. Through his peripheral vision, he watched the Phoenix Elite team take their positions with all the subtle positioning skills of a marching band. They clustered together, moved loudly through the brush, and telegraphed their intentions with hand signals that would have been visible from space. 20 minutes later, the group returned to the staging area, paint splattered and clearly frustrated. They'd been eliminated by a team of middle-aged accountants who'd been playing paintball for 6 months. "That was bullshit," Brad announced angrily. "Those guys were camping the whole time, no tactical movement at all." "The equipment's off," Austin complained. "Our guns weren't shooting straight." The CO2 was inconsistent. Earl looked up from the paintball gun he was cleaning. "You want me to check the equipment?" "Yeah, check it," Connor said irritably. "Something's definitely wrong. We had perfect shots that were going wide." Earl examined each of their guns with the same methodical precision he'd applied earlier. He tested the firing mechanisms, checked the CO2 pressure, and sighted down the barrels. After 5 minutes of careful inspection, he looked up. "Equipment's fine. All guns are shooting straight and consistent." "Then what's the problem?" Derek demanded. "We know what we're doing. We train for this stuff." Earl set down the paintball gun he'd been examining. "Your positions were too close together, made you an easy target. Your movement was loud enough to track from 100 yards away. And you were shooting too fast, not taking time to aim properly." The group exchanged glances. "Oh, so now the maintenance guy's giving us tactical advice?" Austin asked sarcastically. "You asked what the problem was," Earl replied calmly. "Look, old man," Brad said, his frustration boiling over into open hostility. "I don't know what your deal is, but we don't need lectures from someone who's never played competitive paintball in his life. We came here to have fun, not get criticized by the guy who hands out equipment. Maybe you should stick to cleaning guns and leave the playing to people who actually know what they're doing," Marcus added, finally joining his friend's mockery. Earl nodded slightly and returned to his work. Fair enough. But Jake Morrison, who had been listening from nearby, couldn't let it go. "You know what, guys? Maybe you should play a round against Earl. Show him how it's really done." The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge. The Phoenix Elite team looked at each other, then at Earl, who continued cleaning equipment without seeming to pay attention. "Play against the old guy?" Connor asked, as if Jake had suggested they race against a turtle. "Why not?" Jake pressed. "You keep saying he doesn't understand tactics or skill. Here's your chance to prove it." "That's not really fair," Derek protested, though his tone suggested he was warming to the idea. 5 of us against one old guy who probably hasn't played in years. "Make it interesting," Jake suggested. "Earl takes the high ground course solo. You guys take the low ground with full tactical coordination. Should be easy for serious players like yourselves." Brad's competitive instincts kicked in. "You know what? Fine. Let's do it. But we're not going easy on him just because he's old." "Wouldn't want you to," Jake replied, looking at Earl. "What do you say, Earl? Up for a game?" Earl set down the paintball gun he'd been cleaning and looked at the 5 young men who had spent the morning dismissing him as irrelevant. He thought about the mountains of Vietnam, where he'd spent weeks alone in the wilderness, taking shots that had to be perfect because second chances didn't exist in war. "1 round," Earl said quietly. "Elimination game. 30 minutes. The Phoenix elite team laughed among themselves as they prepared for what they assumed would be the easiest victory of their paintball careers. Austin made jokes about taking it easy on the old man. Connor started planning how they'd celebrate after their inevitable win. Derek wondered if they should let Earl get a few shots off before eliminating him, just to be sporting. Earl selected his equipment with the same care he'd once used, choosing a rifle for a mission. He picked a basic paintball gun, nothing fancy, just reliable and accurate. He tested its weight, checked the sight alignment, and loaded it with the methodical precision that had once made him one of the deadliest snipers in the Marine Corps. "This is going to be embarrassing," Brad whispered to his teammates as they took their positions. "Poor old guy probably doesn't even know what hit him." The Desert Storm course stretched across 2 acres of rocky Arizona terrain, with Earl starting from the elevated position and the Phoenix elite team beginning from the valley floor. Multiple rock formations, scrub brush, and artificial barriers provided cover, while the varied elevation created natural sniper positions that Earl had been studying for 8 years. Jake Morrison acted as referee, setting up communication points and explaining the rules one final time. Elimination game. Last man or team standing wins. No mercy shots. No arguments about hits. Clean games all around. The whistle blew at exactly 2:30 p.m. Earl moved immediately to his right, away from his starting position, using terrain features to mask his movement. The Phoenix elite team advanced up the hill in a loose formation, their confidence evident in their casual movement and loud communication. "Spread out," Brad commanded. "He's probably hiding behind the first rock he could find. Let's flush him out." What they didn't know was that Earl had already moved 300 yards from his starting position, using routes he'd memorized over years of maintaining the course. He positioned himself behind a rock formation that offered clear sight lines to the main approaches while keeping him concealed from multiple angles. Earl's first shot came 8 minutes into the game. Connor Walsh was moving between 2 large boulders when a paintball appeared seemingly from nowhere, striking him center mass with perfect accuracy. Connor spun around, looking for the source of the shot, but saw nothing. "Contact!" he yelled. "I'm hit! Where the hell did that come from?" Earl had already moved to a different position, using the confusion to relocate while remaining invisible to the remaining 4 players. His Marine Corps training had taught him that the most dangerous moment for a sniper was immediately after taking a shot, when muzzle flash and sound could reveal his position. "Anyone see where he is?" Austin called out, his earlier confidence replaced by nervous energy. "Negative," Derek replied, scanning the rocks above them. "Could be anywhere up there." Earl's second shot came 12 minutes later. Austin Phillips was attempting to flank what he thought was Earl's position when a paintball struck him in the shoulder. Like Connor, Austin never saw the shooter. "This is impossible," Austin complained as he walked off the field. "How is he hitting us when we can't even see him?" Brad, Derek, and Marcus regrouped behind a large rock formation, their tactical coordination breaking down as they realized they were being systematically eliminated by an opponent they couldn't locate. "He's got to be moving," Derek reasoned. "No way he's making these shots from a single position." "Then let's corner him," Brad decided. "Marcus, you go left. Derek, take the right flank. I'll move straight up the middle. He can't shoot all 3 of us at once." It was exactly the kind of tactical thinking that had gotten soldiers killed in Vietnam, and Earl recognized it immediately. Instead of repositioning to avoid the flanking maneuver, he moved to a central position that would allow him to engage each target separately as they approached. Marcus Rodriguez was the first to reach Earl's new position. He was moving carefully, paintball gun ready, when he heard a quiet voice behind him. "You're dead." Marcus spun around to find Earl standing 10 feet away, paintball gun trained on him with rock-steady precision. The shot that followed struck Marcus in the chest before he could even raise his weapon. "How did you—" Marcus began, but Earl had already melted back into the terrain. Brad and Derek heard the shot and tried to converge on the sound, but Earl was already moving again, using their own noise to mask his repositioning. His Marine Corps training had taught him to think like his enemies, to anticipate their movements, and to always be where they didn't expect him to be. Derek Stone was eliminated 16 minutes into the game when he stepped into what he thought was an empty clearing. Earl's shot came from a position that should have been impossible, an elevated rock formation that Derek was certain he'd already checked. "This is unreal," Derek muttered as he walked off the field. "It's like he's invisible." That left Brad Patterson alone against Earl, with 14 minutes remaining in the game. Brad was athletic, determined, and had been the best player on his team. But he was also rattled by watching his 4 teammates get eliminated by an opponent they'd never even seen clearly. Earl could have ended the game quickly. He had multiple opportunities for clean shots as Brad moved through the course. But something made him wait. Perhaps it was the memory of the morning's mockery. Or perhaps it was the desire to teach a lesson about respect and humility. Brad spent the next 10 minutes in growing frustration, calling out challenges and trying to draw Earl into open combat. "Come on, old man! Stop hiding and fight like a man!" Earl's response came in the form of movement, sounds from different directions, glimpses of motion that disappeared when Brad turned to look, and the constant psychological pressure of knowing that his opponent could eliminate him at any moment. With 2 minutes remaining in the game, Earl finally made his move. He stepped into the open, 60 yards from Brad's position, and stood motionless with his paintball gun at ready. Brad saw him immediately and raised his weapon, confidence flooding back at the prospect of finally getting a clear shot. But as he aimed, something in Earl's stance, the perfect balance, the unwavering steadiness, the complete absence of tension, made him hesitate. In that moment of hesitation, Earl fired a single shot. The paintball struck Brad in the center of his chest with surgical precision, the impact audible across the entire course. Brad looked down at the paint splatter, then back at Earl, who was already walking off the field. The game was over. 5 experienced players eliminated by one 67-year-old maintenance worker who had never once appeared to hurry, never seemed stressed, and never missed a shot. The Phoenix Elite team gathered around Jake Morrison, their earlier cockiness replaced by stunned silence. "How did he do that?" Connor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, he made it look easy," Austin added. "Like we weren't even trying." Jake looked at the 5 young men who had spent the morning mocking Earl's abilities. "You want to know how he did it?" "Yeah," Brad replied, his earlier arrogance completely deflated. "I've never seen anything like that." Jake glanced toward the equipment area, where Earl was cleaning his paintball gun with the same methodical precision he applied to everything else. "Earl Patterson, Marine Corps sniper, 3 tours in Vietnam. I'm not supposed to talk about his record, but let's just say you guys just got schooled by one of the most decorated marksmen in military history." The silence that followed was deafening. The 5 college students looked at each other, then toward Earl as the full implications of the morning's events sank in. "He's a real sniper?" Derek asked weakly. "Real as they come," Jake confirmed. "Silver Star, Bronze Star, the whole package. 47 confirmed kills in Vietnam, and that's just what's in his official record." Marcus Rodriguez was the first to speak up. "We need to apologize. We were completely out of line this morning." "Yeah," Brad agreed, his voice hollow. "We were total assholes. I feel like crap." Austin nodded emphatically. "I can't believe we talked to him like that. A real war hero, and we treated him like he was nothing." Jake watched their transformation with satisfaction. "Earl's a good man. He doesn't talk about his service much, but he's one of the most skilled people I've ever known. He just chooses to let his actions speak for him." The Phoenix Elite team approached Earl as he finished cleaning his equipment. The swagger and mockery of the morning had been replaced by genuine shame and respect. "Mr. Patterson," Brad began hesitantly, "we owe you a huge apology. We were completely disrespectful this morning, and we had no idea about your background." Earl looked up from his work, his expression unchanged. "You don't owe me anything. You played hard and lost. That's paintball." "But we were jerks," Connor insisted. "We made fun of you, questioned your knowledge, treated you like you didn't matter. That was wrong." "You didn't know," Earl replied simply. "Most people don't." Derek stepped forward. "Can I ask about your service? I mean, if you're comfortable talking about it." Earl considered the question for a moment. 24 years in the Corps. Did my job. Came home." "Jake said you were a sniper," Austin said respectfully. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was what needed to be done," Earl replied. He finished cleaning the paintball gun and looked at the 5 young men. "You boys did fine today. Good teamwork, good communication. Just need to work on your fieldcraft." "Fieldcraft?" Marcus asked. "Moving quietly, reading terrain, patience." Earl gestured toward the course they just played. "Paintball's about precision, not speed. Most people try to rush. Better to wait for the right shot." Brad nodded eagerly. Would you be willing to teach us? I mean, if you have time?" Earl considered the offer. I work here weekends. You come back, I'll show you what I can. The Phoenix Elite team returned the following Saturday, their attitudes completely transformed. They listened respectfully as Earl explained concepts like range estimation, wind reading, and tactical positioning. They practiced patience instead of rushing, learned to move quietly through the terrain, and began to understand that precision was more valuable than speed. The first rule of marksmanship, Earl told them during one of their training sessions, is that you can't miss fast enough to win. Better to take your time and make the shot count. Over the following months, the Phoenix Elite team became regular students of Earl's informal training program. They learned not just about paintball tactics, but about discipline, respect, and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from genuine skill rather than empty boasting. Brad Patterson, who had been the most disrespectful during their first encounter, became Earl's most dedicated student. "You changed my whole perspective," Brad told him one day. "I used to think being loud and aggressive was what made you tough. Now I understand that real strength is quiet." Other players at Thunder Ridge began to notice the change in the Phoenix Elite team's performance. They moved with precision, shot with accuracy, and conducted themselves with a level of professionalism that stood out among the weekend warriors. "What happened to those guys?" a regular customer asked Jake Morrison. "They used to be pretty obnoxious, but now they're like a different team. They met someone who taught them the difference between looking tactical and being tactical," Jake replied. Earl never talked about his military service beyond basic facts, but his teaching spoke volumes about the skills he'd developed and the experiences he'd carried. He showed his students how to read terrain, how to predict enemy movement, and how to make every shot count. In Vietnam, Earl told them during one training session, "You didn't get second chances. Every shot had to be perfect, every movement had to be silent, and every decision had to be right. Those habits stay with you." The Phoenix Elite team began participating in regional paintball tournaments, applying Earl's teachings to competitive play. Their transformation was remarkable. From loud, cocky players who relied on aggression to disciplined tacticians who won through precision and patience. "We never would have improved without Earl," Connor told a reporter covering one of their tournament victories. "He taught us that real skill doesn't need to announce itself. It just performs when it matters." Earl continued working at Thunder Ridge, maintaining equipment and helping customers, but now his role had expanded to include informal instruction for serious players who wanted to improve their skills. He never advertised his military background, but word spread through the paintball community that there was a former Marine sniper in Arizona who could teach advanced tactics. "Why do you do this?" Austin asked Earl one day. "I mean, you could probably make good money as a professional instructor." Earl looked out at the desert landscape where he'd found peace after decades of war. "This is where I belong. These are the people I want to help. Money's not the point." 6 months after their first encounter, the Phoenix Elite team organized a special event at Thunder Ridge to honor Earl's contributions to their development. They invited other teams, arranged for local media coverage, and prepared a ceremony to recognize his service and teaching. Earl declined the public recognition, but agreed to participate in a special tournament featuring teams he'd trained. The event raised money for veteran organizations and introduced other players to the precision-focused approach Earl had developed. "Earl Patterson represents everything we should aspire to," Brad told the gathered crowd. "Skill without ego, strength without arrogance, and the willingness to share knowledge with people who probably didn't deserve his patience." Earl kept his Silver Star and Bronze Star in a small case at home, along with commendations from commanders who had called him one of the finest soldiers they'd ever known. But at Thunder Ridge, surrounded by students who had learned to respect both his teaching and his character, Earl had found a different kind of satisfaction. The man handing out paintball equipment and cleaning up after weekend games might look like any other part-time employee, but his eyes still read terrain with the precision of someone who had once made impossible shots in impossible circumstances. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is exactly the person everyone needs to learn from. Earl Patterson had spent decades perfecting skills that most people couldn't imagine, and now he was sharing those skills with young people who had learned the hard way that real expertise doesn't need to announce itself. It just performs when called upon. Have you ever misjudged someone based on their job or appearance, only to discover they had extraordinary skills or experience? Earl's story reminds us that veterans often carry their expertise into civilian jobs where it's not immediately obvious. The maintenance worker, equipment handler, or quiet guy in the corner might be someone whose knowledge and abilities could change your entire perspective on what excellence looks like. Where are you watching from today? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know about a time when you discovered someone's hidden expertise completely changed your understanding of what they were capable of.